break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly arrive, will quickly appear. I can't read my damn hand. So here's the deal. We think that we're going to do something this afternoon in our service, but it's really, you don't go to the margins to make a difference, then it's about you. But you go to the margins so that the folks there make you different, and then it's about us. And so that's kind of what's happening here. It's about healing. Everybody gets healed. Nobody's well until everybody's well. And how do you feel when you're healed? Were not our hearts burning within us, as the disciples said? Yeah, it feels good. Jesus isn't saying, get out there, get your ass over there and feed the homeless or whatever. No, he's saying, trust me on this one. Go there and it's gonna break you open and you're gonna feel joyful. That's where the joy is in what you're gonna do this afternoon. It's not saving, rescuing, fixing people. It's about entering into relationship with people. And you have to do certain things in order to do that. You have to be present in the present moment, anchored in the present moment. You have to look at people, you have to see them. And then you choose to delight in people. I remember we have a bakery at Homeboy Bakery, and a homie named Caesar appeared in my office, and he had a hairnet on. He works in the bakery, has an apron that says Homeboy Bakery. It's dusted with flour. And he's standing over my desk. He says, look, I need your divided attention. I said, you are in luck, because that's exactly what you're going to be getting. And he says, oh my God, I love this job. I bake bread. I bring home bread home to my lady and my kids, and my mom, she's proud of me. And my kids, they're not ashamed of me. And then he looks at me and he says, and you know who I have to thank for this job. And I said, well, who? And he looked at me strangely and he said, well, God, of course. I go, oh, sure, of course. That would be God. He goes, wait a minute, you thought I was going to say you. I said, no, gosh, God's number one. And he looked at me and he said, you are so lucky. You're not living in them Genesis days. I'm sorry, what now? Genesis days? He goes, yeah, because God would have had struck down your ass already by now. And the two of us, we just collapsed in laughter. And if you're not present when that happens, you'll miss it. And though you will go to serve this afternoon, you want to delight in the people you're privileged to accompany, because that's where the joy is. And you'll say tonight when you go home, were not our hearts burning within us? And indeed, our light has broken forth like the dawn, and our healing has quickly appeared. But you have to leave something behind. We're so self-absorbed and we're so worried about what's going to happen next to us or whatever. But the minute you step aside from that self-absorption, watch what happens. So in Los Angeles for 40 years, I've walked with gang members. So part of that is I go and say mass at juvenile halls and probation camps, all of them. We have lots of them, too many of them. But because I lived in this one community in Boyle Heights for 40 years, people, homies mainly, asked me to do their sacraments, and so I raced back to Dolores Mission, the parish where I live, and so every Saturday is the same. I have 1 o'clock baptism, 2 o'clock quinceañera, 3 o'clock wedding, 4 o'clock exorcism. Just checking to see if you're still listening. Thank you for still listening to me. And so this one day I came back and I had a baptism at 1, So it was, 25 minutes to 1. I thought, well, I have time to go to my office at Homeboy Industries. And so I went over there. It was on First Street then, and I'm contento, feliz. I'm going through my mail. When in walks this woman, I find out her name is Lisa. She's in her mid-30s. She's a gang member. She's covered in tattoos. She's a heroin addict. She's a felon. She's engaged in human trafficking. And this is the first time she's ever stepped foot in my office at Homeboy Industries. And it's 20 minutes to 1 now. And the homies call her La Gritona because she's always screaming. Like, they'll toss her out of the bar next door in the middle of the day and she's shaking her fist and screaming. Or she'll be at the payphone across the street. Just let me stay tonight, pleading with family members or friends. And this is the first time she's stepped into our office. And she comes into my little office. It's covered with photographs. She's kind of looking at the walls. And then she sits down, she launches right in. I need help. Whew, I've been to like 50 rehabs. I'm known all over, nationwide. And then she says, I graduated, went to Catholic schools all my life. I graduated from elementary. I even graduated from Sacred Heart High School in Lincoln Heights. And then she gets still. In fact, she says, the first time I ever used heroin was right after I graduated. And I've been trying to stop since the moment I began. And I watched as she leaned her head against the wall behind her, and her eyes became like ponds, water rising to meet its edges and spilling over. And she cried and she cried. I let her cry. Until finally she leveled her gaze at me and she said with great deliberation, I am a disgrace. And suddenly her shame met mine, because when I had seen her walk into my office that afternoon, I had mistaken her for an interruption. The measure of our compassion lies not in our service of those on the margins, but only in our willingness to be in kinship with them. And that can only happen if we step aside from our own self-absorption. But we're walking each other home like Jesus with the 2 disciples. And when we do that, healing happens, because it's the relationship that heals. You'll see this all over again today when you do service. You're connecting. And that's the great gift. A friend of mine who works with homeless people, she said, homeless people don't become homeless because they run out of money. They become homeless because they run out of relationships. Mm. And that's what you'll do this afternoon. Even for one brief moment with people, you'll connect. And they'll start to inhabit the truth of who they are. Many years ago, I knew a homie we all called him Bandit, and he was a bandit. And I remember I'd be in the projects on my beach cruiser, and I'd see him there, and he'd be running to a car to sell crack cocaine, which is what they did in those days, gang members. And I gave him my card 1,000,000 times. And one day he walked into Homeboy, and I couldn't believe it. Yes, milagro. And he goes, I'm tired of being tired. So he did our 18-month program, and he healed, and he inhabited his truth, and he discovered that loving was his home. And once he knew that, he was never homesick again. So the people in our office, our job developers, after his 18 months, they moved him to a warehouse job, kind of an entry-level, low-paying job. And then, cut to 5 years later, he's at Mero Chingon and the whole thing. He's running the warehouse. And then 3 or so years later, he got an even higher promotion. And then Bandit, he was married to his high school sweetheart, and he had 3 daughters and had a home. I hadn't heard from him in a long time, and no news is good news sometimes with gang members. So he calls me on a Friday afternoon, and he's medio paniqueado in his voice, and he says, "Gee, you have to bless my daughter." ¿Qué pasó, mijo? Is she sick? Is she in the hospital? Oh, no. On Sunday, she's going to Humboldt College. And we're scared for her because it's far. And she's just a little chaparrita. I don't know. Can you give her a blessing before she goes? I said, sure. Look, tomorrow is Saturday. I have an exorcism at 1. Okay, you're still with me, thank you. And so why don't you come at 12:30, we'll do a little bendición. And so sure enough, right at 12:30, Bandit and his wife and the 3 daughters, including tiny little Jessica, show up for this blessing. And I said, so let's make a circle around Jessica. Everybody touch her, put your hands on her shoulder, on her head. Connect. And I said, bow your heads and close your eyes. And as the homies say, I do a long ass prayer, and I go on. And suddenly I discovered that we've all become chillones, and I don't know why we're crying, except for the fact that Bandit and his wife don't know anybody who's ever gone to college except me. Certainly nobody in their families. So I finished the prayer, and I'm wiping my eyes, and everybody is. And so to change the subject, hey, Jessica, what are you going to study at Humboldt College? She was very quick. Forensic psychology. I go, dang, forensic psychology. Bandit chimes in and says, yeah, she wants to study the criminal mind. And so Jessica looks at her dad and does one of these. He laughs and he goes, yeah, I'm going to be her first subject. So we go out to the car, abrazos, and Bandit's wife goes in the car and the 3 kids. And Bandit hangs back, and I'm glad he has. And I said, oye, mijo, te digo una cosa. I give you credit for the man you've chosen to become, for choosing to walk in your own footsteps. I'm proud of you. And his eyes fill up with tears. And he says, ¿sabes qué? I'm proud of myself. All my life, people called me a lowlife, a bueno para nada, good for nothing. I guess I showed them. I said, yeah, I guess you did. And the soul feels its worth. And everybody's feeling the healing and the joy that is meant for all of us. So this afternoon, you'll go on service, and you're going to be reached by people, and you're going to receive people. And then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will appear quickly. And trust me, tonight you're going to say, we're not our hearts burning within us today.
Amen.